Welcome.
Hello everybody, you are all very welcome. Here we go, here's the 5M2, the Senate speech from the Phantom Menace, and I'll just go through it slowly. There we go. I'm just going to go through it phrase by phrase. Now, it's 8 bars long, but it's also 39, well, not quite 39 seconds, but 20 seconds or so. It's quite a long time. And also, it's definitely all of one flavour in terms of tonality. So let's try and work out what that actually is. One of the things that I've been doing is sort of exploring, differences at the moment between these different sets, 419A, 419B. Now, if you haven't watched the primer on pitch class sets, then now is probably the time to do that, because we're going to explore a few of them. And we can see that in here, there are 2 listings for 419, the prime form and another version of the prime form. It shares the same interval vector, which means there's only 1 minor second, no major seconds, 1 minor third, 3 major thirds, and 1 perfect fourth within the set between any 2 given pitches. So normally it might be this thing, a minor chord with a major 7th, but also it can be something else, which is a major chord with a flat 6. Now let's explore that in a little bit more detail. How do I get to that, first of all? So if we count out the notes here, we've got some strange things going on. So we've got G, B, so we've got a D sharp, so it makes it sort of augmented, but we've also got that B flat as well. Now if I make that D sharp and convert it enharmonically to an E flat, and also move it down, imagine that D flat is now below the G, and then imagine that B flat is here, and then the B natural comes in. So what we've got here is a sort of reversal. So I'm just going to try and create a few bars. So I've got a B natural and a B flat at the same time. Let's go back to this and see where it came from. So originally that was a D sharp and it was here, and also we had our B flat in the melody. So we had that configuration here. Obviously, slight differences in register. here, but I'm just trying to explain where it all comes from. So we converted that D sharp, so at the moment I label that with a G augmented, which it is. I mean, you know, it is that. But it's also got this added note in the melody. And you might sort of think, well, great, but normally you wouldn't necessarily harmonise a G chord with a B flat, a G all chord. In fact, weirdly, any sort of whole tone scale would always work with it. But obviously, there's not a whole tone between the B flat and the B natural. So I'm trying to explain where all this harmony comes from. And one of the things that it comes from is, or it makes this chord complex, which is 419B. So if we, again, explore it in even more detail, 419B, 0348 means that 0 being middle C, where it starts. 1, 2, 3, E flat, and an E natural, and then 8. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'll just do that again. 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, I made a slight error. It's A flat there. So we'd have an A flat chord with a flat 6, A flat major chord with a flat 6. So in here, we've got an E flat major chord with a flat 6, but it's in first inversion, so that we start with the G instead of the E flat. So we make that into that. So that's the chord complex, but we've got the G in the bass. So as we can see here, the G is the lowest note. So I'm just going to remove that. And then we've got the B flat in the top. So we've got that. So it looks like an augmented chord, and it sounds like an augmented chord, but it's actually even more complicated, that we've got a major chord with a flat 6. But it doesn't really matter how you want to look at it. You could also argue that that's also an augmented chord. And then you've got a sort of flat 5 on top of it. So there are lots of different ways of describing the chord in terms of how you want to get your head around it. But the important thing is that it creates this interesting chord complex, which is listed in those pitch class sets as 419B. Now, you might also think, well, where does that come from as well? What's it part of? So part of it is to do with different scales that all of these things are joined to. So I've been putting together a little thing which is not quite ready yet. So I'll make sure that it is ready soon. But one of these is to sort of find out where all of these chords come from. So 419, both A and V versions come from this hexatonic set called 620. Some people start on the minor third version instead of the semitone, but it's an alternating scale of semitone, minor third, semitone, minor third, semitone. So like that. And that sort of rather odd set is definitely something that Williams uses a lot. So we know that that is from a type of hexatonic set. And also, whenever you see augmented chords, you always have to think in Williams, that's probably hexatonic, because the hexatonic set is made up of those. You know, you can sort of find all of them. There we go. Another one as well. Whenever we have those augmented chords, we always have to think, it's probably from a sort of hexatonic seed set. And there are two which Williams uses. There's 620. There's also another one, actually, called 6Z19, Wonder whether I've got to that stage yet. Yes, I have actually. Which is actually sort of related more to a Hungarian minor, which we'll come on to. As I said, that little bit of information isn't quite ready yet. I just need to double check it, make sure I haven't made any mistakes, because it does take a bit of time to get your head around all of this. And, you know, I've only discussed one chord so far, and it's already taken me quite a long time to do it. But hopefully the mist and the fog is clearing. Here we've got a selection of these chords. He's using a sort of, I guess, a type of planing technique. As well, in terms of what's going on, auxiliary notes, you know, either side of the main scale tone. And also what's really interesting is that you know, once he's got a pitch complex like 419B, he can change it round so it makes a different version of it. So 419A, if we just go back to this, is the minor chord with a major seventh, like that. So it reminds me of Vertigo, the beginning of Vertigo. And I love the seamlessness. That wasn't very seemly. Seamlessness. What a ridiculous word to say. Between one type of chord and the other type of chord. So here we've got 419B. So here we've got a clear sort of A minor triad with our major seventh. So I put A minor with a major seventh. But that major seventh is in the bass. Like that. It's quite harsh. Because you get that really interesting minor ninth between the G sharp and the A. So it sounds very dark and quite sort of gnarly as well. Also notice that I've actually not put in all of the second inversions just because there are so many. But root position, second inversion, root position, second inversion, second inversion, second inversion, second inversion, something else. Just a dyad, root position, root position. So, you know, don't underestimate the fact that he uses second inversions a lot. So, what's the next thing that goes on? So that then morphs from our 419B complex to a 419A complex with little auxiliary notes. We've then got a little dyad, which is ambiguous, and then we've just got simply minor triads in root position, which is introducing the main voice on the clarinet and the flute. Now what's going on here? So we've got lots of different things in the complex here. So if I go back to it here, we've got mainly an A minor harmony. We've also got an ostinato, like that, in the violins, with a three-note cell, which we'll explore in a minute, and then we've got other chords which that's basically an A minor chord, and then we go into an extraordinary sort of chord here. So it's not quite a diminished chord. I was trying to get to the right note, by the way. So E flat, F sharp or G flat, A natural, C sharp. So we'd normally have a diminished seventh, so half diminished. The diminished seventh is actually a minor seventh instead. But it's amazing how seamlessly he goes from one to the other. So here we've got a root position A minor chord, and then it moves to that chord, which is really extraordinary. It doesn't sound like a half diminished chord at all. This added note here then makes it a bit more understandable. So then we've got a minor chord with a sixth. So you can always check these things on your own as well. So if I type in my little pitch class set calculator, and bring it up for you. So here we go. A, C, E, F. It becomes 420, which is another from a hexatonic set as well. In this case, it's a major 7th chord. But it doesn't sound like that. It's just because when you put it in first inversion, it sounds like a minor chord with a 6. If I put that down, that top note, it becomes that, which is a very, very different flavour of chord, and he doesn't usually do it in that way. Really extraordinary. In terms of oscillating between those two things, so 420 and then everything else. Now, in the grand scheme of things, this whole thing is in something called the Hungarian Minor scale. So if you look up on, again, these sort of list of pitch class sets, which seems to have suddenly disappeared, but here we go, I think they are here. You'll find them where it is listed under 722, which is this thing called the double harmonic minor scale. But if you scroll down and think about the modes, in other words, which starting note you start on, keeping each note the actual pitch the same, we get to this thing: 1, 2, flat 3, sharp 4, 5, flat 6, 7, 8. So the Hungarian minor is the same as a harmonic minor with a raised fourth. And it's always those notes in the middle that really give it its special flavour. So this one here is from A, Hungarian Minor. So those are the notes from Hungarian Minor. Yep, E, G sharp, B. Yeah, we've got those E flats. So really sort of interesting sort of that sort of tritone outline. And then we've also got these 3/3 chords. So 3/3 is a 3-note chord, which is used again extensively by Williams. And like many of these chords, there are 2 different versions of them. So we've got 3/3A, which is 014. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it sounds like beginning an octatonic scale, let's say, for example. 034 is more characterized by a sort of major minor feel to it. So you've got a minor third and a major third as well. So when you put them in different inversions, you get all sorts of different things here. So here we've got an F. If we imagine the G sharp as an A flat and the A natural, we've got that minor major thing. So that's why it's 3/3B as well. But usually, although you can put them into the calculator, you also need to work out what the actual distance between the notes is sometimes, so that you can get the different versions of A or B. So this one is definitely a major minor feel to it. So, but it's also part of the Hungarian Minor as well. Because right at the end of the Hungarian Minor, we get this interval. 1, 2, 3. We get the same thing, that 3/3B. Really, really interesting. Not quite sure whether I'd talked about that too much at this stage. But it's just worth bearing in mind. So let's try and illustrate that a little bit clearer. Let's try and do that. Let's make that the sharp 4. So to get to that, I was just writing a normal A minor harmonic scale, and I've raised the 4th. So we've got this a really interesting sort of sequence of notes at the top, and that's the main sort of thing. So here, those notes comprise the 3/3. Whoops. because we've got our minor third and our major third. So we know that it's inherently part of that scale. And what's really interesting is that even in an octatonic scale, even in a hexatonic scale, we also find that those notes are also there as well. So there they are in 620. And we've also known that 3/3A is part of the hexatonic set, where it starts 014, 014. So it's a really useful linking chord, and it shouldn't be underestimated because he uses it all the time as a sort of linking chord between all the different types of scales. So both it's contained in the octatonic scale, it's contained in the hexatonic scale, Hungarian minor, and of course a harmonic minor scale right at the end. So it's where he gets his sort of slight gnarliness. That little 3/3 is a sort of seed motif for Williams as well, and other composers, of course. Obviously, I'm just focusing on Williams for the time being. So I know that was a very laborious way around to sort of explain everything, but I hope it is sort of, again, the fog is starting to clear. So all of this melody is drawn from a Hungarian minor in A, and all of the intervals within that mode or scale, it is a mode within a scale, are explored and exploited. In this case, they're just repeated. And we also have a sort of underlying harmony which goes with this Hungarian minor as well. Let's carry on. So that's the Hungarian minor. I'm just playing it along with it so you can hear the flavour. Now we go up a semitone. So he's sort of done this Hungarian minor, and now he's going sort of into a, is it a Hungarian minor? Not quite, but it's going to B flat minor at this point. So all sorts of things going on. Just going to replay it again and then carry on slightly. Try to get to the right place. Here we go. And then I'll take it back again. So, yeah, so we've gone from A minor simply to B flat minor. So the way he gets there is just by root position chord. Now it's really interesting. I think it is significant that he doesn't start with a root position chord, because F seems a more pleasurable chord to go to. It's in a bass note from A than B flat is, because B flat would be a little bit sort of ham-fisted, I think, like that. It's just less stark, and then he actually then gets to it like he does so many times. Second inversion, introduce first, and then he'll put the tonic and, sorry, the root in at this point in the tuba, and then he climbs up. So we've got a planing technique going to, so that sort of distance of a minor third, and then he goes by tritone to G minor, then to A minor with a major seventh. So that is an example of that 419. So sometimes you can see them automatically on here. Yeah, minor chord with a major 7th, 419A. So it makes a reappearance, and again, part of that you're thinking, there's definitely an element of hexatonicness in that at that point, but he doesn't really stay there. And then he moves into a minor chord with a diminished 5th as well, which is very gnarly because of the gnarliness is here, really. So we've got our minor chord, and then the diminished chord is actually in the top voice at this point. Think of it also as an A flat. You could also think of it as a sharp 4, whatever it is easier to understand. But basically that is our minor chord with a diminished. So then we've also and note that 418B sounds similar, but it's different from 419B. So you've just got to be really, really careful with all of these things, because you can get very muddled with the numbers. But in this case, it's a minor chord with diminished as well. So that probably suggests, well, is it from an octatonic scale or not? And this is why I haven't released this other little bit yet, because I'm still working on it. But I've said 418 is more related to an octatonic scale. So I think I had said that before in a previous thing. So we've then got also some other notes. So imagine that we've had this 418B. So we've got this minor chord and a diminished chord at the same time, which is together. And now adding an extra note on the top. So that makes that a pitch complex, which I'll put all in red, called 522. And the really interesting thing about that is, although you could call it a D minor with, it's a flat 5, it's also got a major 7th in it, is he's sort of building up on these sort of little seed 4-note chords and sort of adding to them. So you sort of think, well, where's that from? And if I then extend it with other notes, you could even... B natural doesn't really work in that. So it seems to, again, be drawn from this Hungarian minor mode as well. So that's interesting. Extending a sort of octatonic set with added notes can also become a Hungarian minor. All of these things are very interchangeable and very fluid, which is what makes Williams's music so fascinating, because he can switch seamlessly from a hexatonic set into an octatonic set, sometimes using 3/3, those little 014 or the major minor one, as ways of getting between them, and then just simply gets into a basic triad, but often in second inversion. So hopefully all of this is starting to make a little bit more sense, and then we'll look at what sort of takeaway we can from this, because I know it's sort of quite a short cue, but there's so much of interest here. So we've got this chord, and then we've got B flat minor with a major 7th, which is another 419A that we've had before. And then it just has a little auxiliary chord planing just down. And then we can keep going. Bum, bottom. And really interesting, he's shifted. So he's shifted sort of from a D Hungarian minor so you sort of think, what on earth's going on here? And actually, interestingly enough, every single one of those notes is from B flat Hungarian minor. So he's just modulated to a different scale, which is remarkable, because it really just sort of hits you sort of suddenly. And then he's got this little B flat minor with an add 2, add 9 would equally be good, which is just used as sort of a suspended chord, just to hide the main tonic usually. So here the tonic B flat is just here in the upper extension, the root, I suppose you could call it. And actually the add 2 is in the bass. You kind of want to go to F, but it's not using a dominant function at all. Suddenly goes into something else, which is this octatonic. G octatonic. Those would be the rest of the notes. And it just sort of oscillates its way. Not actually that much going on. That will be all underscore. One of the bars was cut from the final film. And then we move on into climbing up chromatically. Really amazing, because you would normally expect it all in triads, but he doesn't do that. There's just some very, very little things that are going on here. So he's used our 3-3 again, and then 3-8, which is an extraordinarily irregular Italian sixths resolution. So here, so normally you would have, let's imagine that's a C sharp. So we might have E flat and C sharp, and then a G, E flat up there, D flat means C sharp, and then the G in the middle. So that's what I've done here. And then that might resolve there in that way. So 5 of G is a D major chord. So it's like a predominant. Another irregular resolution of an augmented sixth chord is going inwards. So one goes outwards, the top note goes upwards, and the bottom note goes downwards. And then when it's not doing that, it goes inwards, and it behaves like a dominant seventh into whatever the resulting chord is. But instead, he does this, which is the C sharp E flat C sharp E flat G, and then goes to B. That's just, that shouldn't really be allowed, should it? And then he does it again, but completely differently in this part, which is extraordinary. Just mad. Anyway, here we go. And it's so quick, you just can't really tell at all. If he had just done tries, nobody would have batted an eyelid in that rehearsal room at all before the take. Yeah, really, really interesting. And then we just got little chromatics like that going from G to A, but just via a double chromatic neighbouring note. Like that. And then we've got... I think that should be a D flat, but it could be that the reason it was an E flat is that the lip movement and the finger movement, the key movement to go from C to D flat is actually really awkward, especially to go up to A. It could be that. I don't know. I'm not a horn player, but it'd be interesting to ask a horn player, how would it be if you went from to D flat, bom, bottom, instead of like that? Because I was sort of feeling that it probably needs to imitate that, but it doesn't. The other reason is that we've also got this E flat D sharp. Would it sort of affect? I don't know. It's just such a small point. I just can't tell whether it's a typo or a mistake, or whether I'm mishearing it or whatever, because I can't really make it out on the recording. But then we've got this sort of very strange sort of like real chromatics going on in the violins. Just that little hint of something's not quite right. It's a bit uncanny at this point. There we go. Sorry, I took it out. It's just that the sort of capture means that it just sort of aligns with the next thing. You get this sort of horrible sort of blip as the next cue just runs straight into it. But anyway, that's kind of it. So one of the takeaways I was thinking from this is to devise your own versions of these things. And one of them is to work with the Hungarian Minor, and also to sort of, you know, once you've sort of got your head around these different chord complexes, is to sort of almost throw it out the window. Because, of course, you know, when you're writing, you can divide time between pure composition and also just technical work. So this is still technical work, which is where you're taking scales, you're actually working with them, you're really trying to work out what the possible combinations are. So here I've chosen two different Hungarian minor scales, and I've highlighted what 14B might be, and I'm trying to work with them. So I imagine that this might be sort of harmonics. So I've got this major minor, like that going on. I don't know how it's going to sound on the piano, but we can give it a go. Yeah, it's sort of okay. I'd make it a lot slower. I would imagine these would be played by horns, I think. And just sort of modulating into the F Hungarian minor at that stage. So that's where my thinking was. And then I'm trying to be rather ambiguous with the sort of cellos and double basses, sort of similar to what we saw before, but just taking a little bit of a step further and then having some sort of melody. Some sort of melody that shifts from one Hungarian minor, which I'm trying to deliberately obscure the key. I'm not trying to make sure that I've got a Hungarian minor necessarily. I'm just drawing the notes from it. And also, so I'm not going to the tonic. I'm not driving around the tonic. I'm actually starting with the leading note of that scale. Then I'm going to the third, then the second. You know, you could harmonise it in all sorts of different keys. That's a B minor harmonisation underneath it. That's a B flat minor. That's really nice. That's A. Oh, G sharp minor. Wow, G minor. That's a nice exercise, isn't it? Just sort of C minor. Maybe sort of resting on an E minor chord as a sort of resolution. Wow, I mean, it's very funny when you sort of do all of these sort of little improvisations just to get ideas. You know, that's where they come from. That was all the stuff about 14B. So I know I've sort of rambled on quite a bit today, but I just thought it was one of the things that it's becoming a lot clearer, both for me and I hope for you, by the time that we, you know, get through all of this sort of Phantom stuff and, you know, doing little bits of A New Hope and Empire, just on the first cue from Empire. So that's really exciting. That will come soon. And just discussing this in such huge detail that you know, nothing gets lost. And what's incredible is that Williams, nothing's left to chance with any of this stuff. You know, he could have done lots of different things, but he chose not to. He chose to do these specific notes for a specific reason. And then exploring those reasons is just really interesting. And also really getting into the flavour of that harmony is extremely complicated. You can't just go, oh, he just adds a note in the bass and it's just different from the chord. That's just complete, it disrespects him actually in a sense, because we really need to understand absolutely what's going on and then try and work with those techniques, and then try and bring them all together. And one of the things I've been working with in students, with my students, is to, what few students I have, and I deliberately don't take many, because I also work as a composer. But it's because what's nice is to do a sort of mock-up and use a model in one of these bits of reduction that I do. Use it as a model, and then try and recreate that model. So with this thing, Koch equals 74. It's quite slow. There's nothing hugely thematic. It's just all sort of flavor and modes and going from different sorts of color. When we've got sort of woodwind color, and then we've got brass color, and then eventually we've got this sort of string color, sort of pushing it around the orchestra and sort of really trying not just to get to grips with the orchestration, but to use harmony and orchestration in a sort of synthesized way as well. And I hope, by following some of these videos and really going into it in huge depth, and I really would recommend almost spending a whole week on just trying to do this one thing each week, will really improve your understanding of what's going on. It certainly does mine, that's for sure. So I can only imagine what it's doing for yours. So anyway, thank you very much for the support, and sorry to have rambled this week, but there we go. Sometimes it has to be done. So I will see you next time. There'll be more Phantom Menace. I might, if I have time, do the Empire one. I've got lots and lots of work on at the moment, so that might have to wait slightly, but I will get there. So just bear with, and that will come out quite soon. So have a good rest of the week, and I'll see you soon.